Hello and welcome to another episode of The Hush. I'm your host, Shanon Lee, and tonight we have a special guest that's joining us, Denise Rogers. Denise
Hi,
is
everybody.
Hi. Thank you so much for being here. Denise is a journalist. She's a women's advocate. She's the owner of Society Moms and an executive producer of the Society Moms TV talk show. She is a divorced mom of three who, after ending her 15-year marriage, learned that society views women and moms who aren't married very differently than those who are. So thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
I'm so happy that you're here. If you're not aware, the topic for tonight is about the divorcee stigma. As we know, it's alive and well. If you didn't know, I happen to be a columnist for divorcemoms.com, and that's kind of how I got into just really writing, freelance writing, and being a whole lot more public, as you would say, about my story and connecting with other women. So Denise, you've been out of your marriage now for 6 years. Tell us
Yes.
a little bit about your journey.
When I knew that, divorce was ultimately what I was going to do, I knew I was up against a lot. However, I really had no idea how much. It wasn't enough to be making the transition from divorce, being a married mom to a single mom. But then there was also society's view that I knew nothing about. When you are a married woman or mom, you're kind of working in your element and in your world, and things were different. There was the transition of even your social circle, friends that you've known all your life who were married. Now there's a disassociation, there's a distance that comes along with that because, of course, you're the single woman in the bunch, and most of them want to make sure that you're not looking at their husband or you're not sharing some of your views as a single woman with them, and then, creating havoc or whatever it is in their household. So it was very difficult. I was an entrepreneur for many years. And then after being sick for a short time, after a surgery that I had, I decided to kind of close my businesses, and I had two successful daycare centers that I was running. And then it was time for me to get back out into the world. So, of course, as an entrepreneur, you go and you apply for jobs, interviews and things like that. And they want to know where you've been for 15 years, where, you work for yourself. You don't have these references. And, you're a mother who's single. You have three children. And many times, when kids get sick, as they do, you have to call into work. And there's the whole debacle of whether or not you're going to be a reliable employee. And I went through the process of actually losing jobs. I was told many times that, we would love to give you the job, but we kind of feel like maybe you're not going to be as reliable as a woman who has one child because you have three. And, it blew my mind. I was like, is this really happening to women? Is this something that they actually are dealing with? And having not had to face those types of things before, having a spouse, working for myself, I just had no idea. But I learned really, really quickly to the point where, I remember sitting down with my mom and actually saying, I felt like there was no place for me. You were going through the social change of people that you knew, even some family members, now there's issues with work. And it was the guilt of not really being there for my children the way I wanted to be there. You hear the stories of the latchkey kids. At the time, my oldest was 12, and it was not an option for me. It was more important to me how I was parenting, what type of mother I was. And I didn't want to have to make those sacrifices. I didn't want to have to feel guilty because I had to leave my children to go to work. And I didn't want to have the burden of letting someone down because I had to choose my children, of course, which was more important to me. Mm-hmm. So it was a lot. It was a lot. And because of that, I started Society Moms, and I started blogging because I was pissed. I wasn't thinking about helping anybody. I was venting, and I started to connect with other women, and I found out, really quickly that I wasn't the only one going through this. There were women who felt the same way. And after about a year or so of that, I started with Huffington Post. I was always on social media and just kind of relating and directing my questions to mothers. Even if they were celebrities with real life issues. It wasn't Hollywood. It was like I wanted to know, and I wanted to close the gap between the moms that we see on TV and the everyday mom, and let women know that we're all dealing with the same thing. And from there, I started Society Moms television show, where I created a visual platform for women to come in and have a voice. And, I discovered about 6 months in that women were actually starting to change the trajectory of the way they thought about business and balancing family. And, Society Moms is all about women and mom entrepreneurs who are now actually saying that these skills that I'm being paid to bring in hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars for some of these companies, I can also do for myself. So I provide a platform for them to showcase their brands, products, and services, as well as their story, because there are moms at home right now that tune into the show every day, and they need to connect to figure out what to do. And I always consider myself very much that mom that I'm trying to service and help.
Mm-hmm. So you talk about your journey, and I know that one of the reasons why I reached out to you is because I actually happened upon a streaming website, which will remain nameless, but I watched an episode of the Real Housewives of Potomac, and there is an individual on there, Katie Ross, I believe is her name. So she is, divorced mom, and she actually, of 3 children. Left her husband while she was pregnant with their twins, and is featured on the show, living with her boyfriend and her children. And so even though she's always trying to redirect the conversation to her interest in, in charity work, the conversation always rolls around to the fact that, she's not married, but she's living with a man. That she left her husband while she was pregnant. And I'm I'm the type of person where, I watched the show, but then unfortunately I went on to read the comments. And so I started reading this, you're a whore, she's a whore. She is, damaged goods, and, she should really just be focused on raising her children. And not, be trying to have a love life or anything like that. And I was just, really shocked. Yeah. And I was like, what year are we in? That people think that, obviously, something happened, and you don't just up and, leave your husband. There are always these issues that happen. She says that they had, they now have an amicable relationship, but regardless, that was that's their issue. Right. And so now obviously she's moved on. She's in another relationship. The ex, has to be okay with it, because you can't have your children on TV and filming without, the parental consent from both parents. But it really disturbed me that we're in 2016 and people are still labeling, divorced moms as damaged goods, unfit for, a romantic relationship and not deserving of that love in their life. So when I came across your website and you started talking about these other issues in terms of being discriminated against in the job search, especially me coming from a human resources background, no one would ever tell me to my face, that they weren't going to offer me a job because they know I know the law. Right. So I was really shocked. And I'm wondering, now you're 6 years outside of your marriage. You went back to, you kind of reinvented yourself, which a lot of us do. Outside of divorce, you decided to go back to college, earn a degree in communications. And you've had these opportunities to, be a community correspondent for Huffington Post, and to go on to create your own show. So
Yeah.
I'm wondering, what type of feedback can you relate to any of that type of attitude and that feedback from not even friends, just strangers that feel like they have a right to input their opinion of your life?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the title of the show tonight says it all. The stigmas are very much alive. One of the other things that I think I dare not ask you, but, when you read some of the comments, oftentimes in this particular case, when you were reading comments about her, unfortunately, a lot of these comments are coming from women. That's the sad thing about it. It very much is. I think that the attitude is immediately taken when we see a single woman with children. We assume, especially if she has more than one, society assumes that the kids, first of all, she was never married. Okay. She's the single woman. She's the woman who possibly was sleeping with a married man. She's the woman that he didn't love enough or care enough about to marry. So when we see these single women, we never think that she's divorced. Number one, she was always single in many cases, and that's not true. But I think a lot of people fail to understand that divorce is a word that society does not want to hear. It's, I think, related to failure. And if you have a divorce for some reason or another, you are spoiled goods. When in actuality, sometimes the divorce could be the best thing for both people, depending on why you built this relationship. But in many cases, I get the same thing. I just spoke with someone about a week ago about a particular instance, that I had to experience some years ago with even the high school, public school, and going up to the school. There was an issue that I felt my son wasn't treated fairly. But in many cases, society, when they look at the forms and they discover that maybe a man is not in the house, then you're not taking it serious because there's no authority figure to charge what it is that's being done, whether it's unlawful, it's unfair, or what have you. And it is simply garbage. I think that in 2016, as you mentioned, we are long away from atypical, picturesque relationships, marriages, and life. Things happen, as simple as that. And many times we get married before we know who we are. I was somebody who was at the altar at 24. I had no friends who were still in the club at 24. I was okay, but I was married for 3 years before I had my first child. All of my children are by my husband. They all have the same last name. I just, in my divorce, chose to go back to my maiden name. And it was very much about me rebuilding who I was as a person, because I had changed. My kids were okay with it. I went through the process of making sure that they'd gone through, the therapy that I thought maybe they would or would not need. And, it's something that women are charged with in society. Again, it's sad because many times when we talk about these stories, women are complaining that it is the act of other women. It's very much alive. Then there are cases that I talk to women all the time. And then there's some that I've even experienced myself where if you are a single woman with children, then, you don't really have the right to say, okay, I'm going to wait for the right person. Many people feel like you should just be lucky to get whomever is looking at you, and many times it's really about, you loving you. The greatest love that you can have is the love for yourself. And when we go into these marriages, oftentimes we don't really know who we are. We're in bad situations of low self-esteem. And I'll tell people all the time, when you come out of situations like that, it's very important that you take the opportunity and the time necessary to love you and figure out who you are. And when you step back from relationships and you learn this and you work on self and this is established, then you recognize what true love is. And then you do stand, once you know what it is, you're not going to accept anything else.
Absolutely.
But there's some women, I have to say, and I know quite a few, if you're on social media, I'm sure you've seen some of the comments. If it snows outside, I've seen women go on Facebook and post, I bet some of you single women wish you had a man to shovel snow. I mean, let's just keep it real.
My nerves all day.
Okay, we got some women that are keeping men like pets, and we'd be surprised what some women would do to have people shovel snow and change light bulbs every now and then. And mm-hmm. It's ridiculous. The other myth is that if you're a single mom, you're not dating. That's not true.
Really, and you brought up a point before that, first of all, when they see a divorced mom, which I hate to make the distinction because we have so many parallels, with being a divorced mom and being, a single mom who's never married. And, mm-hmm. to me, it really doesn't make a difference. But I always tell the story about, this woman that came, and I happened to be at a park with my entire family. And and I have a blended family, and and my partner is Asian. And so, even though he was standing feet from me, and I'm sitting there on the bench, with my youngest, who was an infant at the time. And the lady goes, "Oh, she says, it just must be so hard for single moms." And I said, "Yeah, I'm sure it is. I know it is." And she just said, "Ooh, I just can't imagine the struggle." And I said,
and you were just sitting on a bench, minding your business.
And she said, and so where is the father? I said, "He's right there." Okay. And I get the look on her face, and I'm thinking, hello. But I know that there are so many, people that
we read so much into, things that we shouldn't, and it's truly sad. But it's on television. It's all around us. People have been sensitized to believe a certain thing. You have a lot of single moms. I did a Periscope not too long ago about single moms raising sons. I have 2 boys and a girl. And it's tough. It's definitely something that will push you to limits that you didn't know that you had, or the ability that you had. But I tell women all the time, if you, for whatever reason it may be, find yourself on the journey where you are a single mom, you have to believe first and foremost that you are more than enough. Is it the best situation? I know women who would rather do this, as a single mom. I know women who have been married and she is a widow, women that are divorced, and then women who have been single all along. And the thing about society is when we see that those women, they're all in one category. And it's single. They don't care how you got there. It's just a bad place to be.
They don't care if and they always think somebody's husband left them. And plenty of us are making a decision to move, an educated decision about moving forward with our lives and what's going to be best for our children. And, and some of us, the lucky ones, actually have amicable relationships, with our ex-husbands. So it's always an assumption, and
and it doesn't have to be negative. It doesn't have to be a negative situation. And it is true that we can have amicable relationships with our ex. We can partner together to raise children, but agree that we're not in a relationship or right for one another. And the other thing I tell people all the time is sometimes you have to love people enough to let them go, and you have to love yourself enough, more importantly, to say that, okay, that's not the best situation for me. And when you're not in a healthy relationship, you're not a healthy person. You're not a healthy mom. You're not good at what you do at work. There's a lot that goes into that situation, and living in what could be seen as toxic environments. It's unfortunate that women are somewhat backed into a corner. I do have or have had friends say to me, you've been divorced now for 6 months, you gonna get married again? And I say all the time, when did having a husband become an accomplishment? Now,
Mm-hmm.
love is not an accomplishment. It's not something I put on my resume. It's a blessing.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are blessed enough to be in a relationship and to love someone and be loved in return the way you should be, it should be seen as a blessing. It's not something that we seek out to do. And when we are forthright in searching and hunting and pursuing that, most times we do it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
We do it wrong.
Absolutely. Another thing that, which is really interesting is that, when you have these attitudes, which is so funny to me about, about divorce, and not really realizing that there's so few of us that have, like, I come from kind of a very traditional background. My parents are still married. My maternal grandparents are still married. And they've had these lengthy, I come from a long line of these lengthy marriages, but it doesn't mean that they were healthy marriages. And certainly, I saw a lot of relationships that I never wanted to emulate. And so, when I was married, and the first time, and I've actually been married twice. So, I'm a writer. I have a lot of my work out there, and people sometimes get confused because they say, well, she said her husband did this and that. Yeah, I've had two husbands. And I've left both marriages, but I was married the first time at 21.
Mm-hmm.
And you're young, and a lot of times, and even if you're older, you don't always marry for the right reasons. And this was a relationship where he really, wanted to be married. And I'm thinking, all right, we're already dating. You were, I thought we were in love. And so what is the next step,
Yeah.
So we did that, and I actually, left the marriage because he was abusive, and he actually had substance abuse issues.
Mm-hmm.
And, I was at 21. We weren't married for a long period of time where I even had the tools, if I wanted to deal with the substance abuse issue of my spouse, to even be able to do that. So that wasn't even a consideration to stay in the marriage. We didn't have any children, and I knew that it was the best thing for me to move on. Yeah. But I remember going into work and, and having coworkers ask about it. And some of them would, even, it was almost humorous to them. Like, oh, well, how long, were you all married? And, and they feel like they have the right to ask you all kind of questions. I mean, people ask you about your finances.
Oh, yeah.
How you going to make it, and it's like, are you contributing?
And I think a lot of times that is a big fear for women. I had friends that were in my social circle when I was married that, were very religious. There were some moms who didn't work at all, and that's fine if it works for your household. And then there were moms who did work, but decided, hey, we have this big house that I want to keep. And, yes, he sleeps in the basement, or yes, we argue sometimes. But the fact of the matter is I'm not willing to step out and be a single mom with one income when I've lived like this. So, people have different things that are deal breakers for them. A healthy relationship is one that falls way at the wayside from what I can tell. With most relationships, we have a lot of married women who are suffering in silence. It looks a lot like a smile in some of the pictures that we post on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and some of these other places. And, this is just something that they have not dealt with, and they're dealing with it by not dealing with it. And as long as I can smile and post pictures and show up at certain parties and things of that nature, none will be the wiser. And I've had people say to me, but what about your kids? You're going to get a divorce, but, what about them? And I'll tell you, you need to talk to some of these grown men who have been raised by some of these women and been raised in households where the parents stayed together and the kids have had to see them arguing. They've had to see them fussing and fighting, or this one hitting that one, as well as the men who have been raised by single women who have felt that they can't do this. So right after one relationship or marriage, they jump into the next because they just have been, fed into the hype that I have to have a man in my house. now you've opened the door where you're at your most vulnerable. Your children are vulnerable, and your sons have to listen to, Buster beating your head against the wall every night and feeling vulnerable himself because he's small. He can't protect you, and he can't protect himself. There's a lot going on, when women look at the hurdle or the work that's involved with standing on your own. Many times when we go into marriages, just to go back a bit, we don't know who we are when we're young. There's a lot that goes on in your 20s that is not the same when you're in your 30s and 40s. Life looks very different for you. And we have a lot of women who, myself, you discover, okay, this is really going to change my life, but this is also something that I have to do because I deserve a better quality of life. Is it hard work? Yes. But I'm going to tell you, I've been able to accomplish more personally for myself than I did when I was married. Is that a great accomplishment? I don't know if I would call it that in the aspect where we look at, hey, I had to get a divorce to do this. I would have loved to be able to accomplish all of these things while I was married, but that really wasn't on the table at the time. What was on the table for me was what I knew I deserved. And 15 years and going over in my mind, had I done all that I needed to do to make this work? But it takes two people, in a relationship. And a lot of women are choosing to suffer in silence because they don't want to do the work, or they feel that I'm just a woman. I see how society treats you, or some of the stories that I've heard, and I'd rather not go there. So they suffer, in silence. And we hear about it. We see about, a lot of these things that they share with us. Some of them don't make it out of marriages. Some of them are going through abusive relationships. Some of them are married to substance abusers. And that's a tough world too. Now, I tell people all the time, peace of mind is priceless. If it's going to be tough in the house and tough, when we're apart, I'm going to choose being apart. If I have to be unhappy and sad being with you, I'm going to choose me and work on me to do what I need to do to make me happy. I'm not going to, stay and suffer, because I think that children know more than what we like to think they do. Even when they can't process it and put it all together, they know when something is not right.
Well, how did you even get to that point? Because I know for me, and I mentioned that, even though I came from a long line of long marriages, lifelong marriages, they weren't always the best example. So for me, in my head, it was always, I always had these are certain issues that I'm just not dealing with. I'm not dealing with issues of, infidelity and having children outside the marriage. There's a lot of stuff. I mean, the only difference between a relationship that lasts and one that doesn't is that both people stay. I had a marriage counselor tell me that once when I went for premarital counseling, is the only difference between you and a marriage that lasts is that both people stayed. It doesn't mean that it's a great relationship. It was.
Amen.
So for you, I know for me, I was always thinking, I'm not putting up with A, B, or C. And these are things that I have seen growing up. These are not things that I'll be dealing with. So were you raised with certain values, or a mother that communicated to you, if it doesn't make you happy, you don't continue to play that role? Or was it something within you that just let you know this isn't something I'm going to deal with?
Well, being married 15 years, that's a long time. When you think about it, that's a real long time. When I decided finally to end my marriage, and in my particular situation, I divorced him. It took me some time because, I am not the type of person who runs away from a challenge. That's not who I am. That's not my makeup. I've never been that person, even when I was a kid. But I had my share of dealing with stuff and turning my head and not seeing this, or pretending that I didn't see. And then, the internal war that I think that all women go through is that a deal breaker? Can I deal with this? How am I going to get past this? And I think after a while, every woman, there's some women, they'll just stay there for whatever reason. But for me, it came down to not so much him, but I didn't want to deal with me anymore. You know, when you're dealing with somebody for 15 years, number one, it doesn't take you 15 years to get yourself together. It just doesn't. And I'm not perfect by any means of the word, but I had sat down with myself. And I think when you get fed up, you just know there's a switch in you that kind of clicks where you just know it's like, you know what, you can't even stand to look at this person. Not only that, you can't stand to look at you if you continue in this situation. So 15 more years, I would not be able to blame somebody else. I would be blaming myself for staying in that situation. I started to take responsibility and the accountability for me. It was what I wanted. It was what I deserved. It had nothing to do with him. You know, I tell people all the time, I don't care how bad your husband or your wife is. They are a product of your conscious decision. At some point, it was great. You know, my marriage was not all bad, but at some point when it took a turn, you know, it wasn't the first alarm that went off that said, hey, I got to get a divorce. Of course, we had our spats, our disagreements like everybody else. But then there were some things that were going on that just sickened me to the point where I had to now look at myself in the mirror and go, are you really going to put up with that? How do you live with you? And I think when women are challenged with dealing with themselves, when we are true to us, you know, I can fool my friends, I can fool my mom, I can fool, you know, my neighbors, the people at my church and my job. But at the end of the day, I have to go home and look at me in the mirror. You understand what I'm saying? And that's what was difficult. When it gets to that point, you start to stand up and say, you know what, I can't do this anymore. To answer the other part of your question, you know, my mom has always been a great support system for me, but she's never been someone who, you know, tells me what to do. You know, she will listen. She will say, you know, my mom has always raised me to say that a question makes room for an answer. And my mother is a very wise woman, you know, and I'm so thankful for her. But there were times when I would go through situations where I couldn't tell her anything because I was not ready to leave him. There's some things that you can't tell your mama because once you tell her, she's going to be looking at you like, girl, what's wrong with you? And you just tell me that you were going through this. So there were some things, of course, that, you know, I hid from her like a lot of us do. But there were also times when there were certain things that she knew that I didn't have to tell her. You know what I mean? And then there were also those times when she would ask me, so what are you going to do? She never said, this is what you should do. But she would say, so what are you going to do about that? You know, and when people ask you that question, that's a powerful thing because you already know what you're supposed to do. It's the struggle of whether or not you're willing to do it. And in many cases, I think women also stay because when we argue about the things that we don't like, we may stop speaking to you. We may not be sleeping with you because we're angry, but we already know that that thing has just made me really, really mad, but I'm not ready to pack my clothes. Do you know what I mean? You've got to get to that point. And until you get to that point, there is nothing anybody else can do to help you, not your friend. They can come pick you up as many times as you want. You know, you can put your stuff in the car and go stay at a hotel. You can leave for a weekend. You know, I remember with a girlfriend getting on a train to New York and I was gone. And I just really needed that time to separate myself from being mom, from being a wife, from my job, from being a daughter, and just get to a place where I could clear my head and deal with myself. I've also counseled some men who are in difficult situations since my divorce and being on this journey with Society Moms. And I tell men all the time, when that woman stops complaining, it's time for you to worry. Because she don't care no more. You know, when she's fussing, when she's fussing about it, when she's crying about it, when she wants to talk about it, you still have a chance. And it's really up to you what you want to do about it. But when you walk in the door and she don't care, when you walk in a room and she don't see you, you in trouble. Because it's all you about gone. It's over. And it's really about what your limits are. I got to that place and I was also, I was heading up on my late 30s at the time. And I started looking at life different. I was like, man, there's some things that I want to do. There's some things that I know I'm capable of doing, wanting to go back to school, get my degree. And that was a big issue. I tell people all the time that physical abuse is evident and it's terrible, but the psychological abuse is something else. Me going back to school, I was always the type of wife where, my house stayed clean, the kids were clean, food was cooked, and there was really nothing wrong. However, I wanted to go back to school. That was one of the deal breakers for me. And I remember letting my husband know when he came in, hey, I've been accepted into this school, and it was online, and I've got all the financial aid, so I'm taking no money out of the house. But then I said, even as I was explaining this, I was being annoyed by myself because I didn't feel like I had to explain all that. Because I could hear myself going, why are you telling him all that? Just, you want to go to school, go to school. But I was trying to also keep peace. And, I remember my ex-husband saying, well, why do you need to go back to school? You're smart enough. Girl, that's a red flag. Yeah. You're smart enough. And, well, if you go back to school, what does that mean for me? I don't want that. I don't want that to mean anything for you. And I knew I was in trouble when I have a grown man saying that. There are a lot of unhealthy relationships that we find ourselves in as women where we are fostering mommy issues with some of the men that we're with. And that's a hell of a burden to have for anybody. It's very unhealthy. And I was just determined at that point, after having given my life, my energy, my love, my time, and my existence to this marriage, I looked back at when I started and I looked back to where I was at the time. And it was time for me to make some changes. I believe that you know. You really know. It's no longer about the person. It becomes about you. It's very personal. Your journey to make that decision and your journey going forward has to be about you, because you have to be equipped and determined that I don't care, come hell or high water, I deserve better and I'm going to have better.
Society,
you have
unfortunately, society often recognizes the sacrifices of, the husband, of the man. And a lot of times they have that good wife that's beside them. If they get a job opportunity, it's not a question that the family is going to move to where the man got an opportunity. But a lot of times, there is a dynamic that exists where there's a power struggle, and it becomes an issue, when the wife, has some level of ambition. And so I know that came into play in both of my marriages, but particularly in my early marriage. And there's a story that I share sometimes about how we would hang out. He had a high school friend that lived in the area and who was also married. And I mean, they would laugh, because I came from a very different upbringing. And so, it was normal to, to want to own property, and it was normal to plan family vacations and different things. And they just thought I was insane. And I was working at the time. And going to school, and they would just be like, you think you're Superwoman, you know what I'm saying? You think you can do it all. And everything was just so negative. Wow. And I remember not even being so as aware of it in my household as, when I would have other classmates, and I had a classmate at the time, and it seemed like her husband was doing anything and everything to sabotage, her ability to go to school. He was still not coming home from work when he was supposed to, when he knew that she had class that evening. So it really wasn't until kind of, looking at her to kind of see where, I'm kind of dealing with the low key, jealousy, from my spouse as well. And it really should be an issue. If you go off and you have to work and you have to make these sacrifices for your career, I should be able to kind of, do some things on my own. And so it's unfortunate that becomes an issue. You did an interview with a psychologist or relationship expert and a licensed practical therapist.
Shanika McClarty. Yeah.
Yeah. So you did an episode about how she helps single women and couples find peace. And she talks about just kind of knowing your worth, which obviously comes into play and is very important when you are making those decisions to end your marriage, if that's something that that you need to do. So I want to kind of throw to a clip of your show, the Society Moms Talk Show,
Okay.
and give me just a moment. Let's see if we can get to that part of the show.
Hi. Mm-hmm.
So that was a powerful moment.
Yeah. Shanika McClarty is, she's definitely a powerful licensed psychotherapist. She's in Howard County. She's actually someone who she had 2 practices in Atlanta, and she's been here in the DC metro area for a few years now. But she has a booming practice. She's a powerhouse. She's actually one of the speakers that we're going to have at the conference. And she deals with women and men, couples as well. A lot of the women who have been her clients are now married, maybe for the second time, but in healthier situations. And I think a lot of times we don't take serious the second and third marriage. But I tell people all the time that second or that third time could be the best marriage and relationship that you can have, because many times when we get married at first, again, we don't know who we are. Mm-hmm. We're many times coming from households and families where we've seen a lot of things that we've gone through, and it's put us in situations. We have some women who always email in the show that they find themselves in abusive relationships, but when they think back of how their father or stepfather used to talk to their mother, and it's like, now I realize what was going on with me. It was familiar. And many times as women, we mistake what's familiar for what feels right and what's love. And that's not necessarily the case. So I tell people all the time, divorce, I'm not for divorce. I'm not advocating for divorce, but I have seen divorce save some lives. And I don't just mean the women or the husbands, but as well as the children. Any toxic relationship is not a good place to be in. And whether it's your spouse, whether you're married or you're dating, you have to understand that you are worthy of a healthy relationship. And too many of us don't know what that is. We're desensitized through the music. We're desensitized through the things that we see in television. And I think Shanika was mentioning that a little further on in the clip, where when we are finding ourselves in relationships, we are with spouses who use the B word, and they're using names and jokingly playing. And because we hear this all the time, there's no alarm going off in your head to tell you that's not supposed to be happening. You should not feel comfortable with certain things. And there should be some alarms that are signaling signaling you to let you know that this is not a healthy relationship. And too long we stay to save face. I have had friends. I had a girlfriend who actually, Shanon, called me from her cell phone 5 minutes before she walked down the aisle. And she said, you know what? I know I should not marry him, but we have spent a lot of money. The church is full with 400 people. The reception cost me all my savings. I'm going to go with this and give it 6 months. And if it doesn't work, I'm out. Wow. Well, you know, she didn't make it to 6 months because she was in an abusive relationship. She's gone now. And it took only 2 months for her to lose her life. But she knew going down the aisle, it becomes more about saving, you know, your face and what people are going to think. I would rather, you know, stand tall and say, hey, that wasn't going to work for me. But we see divorce or separation or not having a spouse as a negative thing, but we don't appreciate the fact that we can live another day to work things out with ourselves, and we deserve positive relationships. It can happen. But Shanika talks a lot about being prepared to be by yourself. Just because you are single and not married does not mean you're lonely. It does not mean that you're not dating. Not everybody that you date needs to see your children. Not everybody that you date needs to make it to your front door. But learning how to date.
You can absolutely date for fun, and certainly, and I always tell people, you have to be ready for it, but you certainly have room to make those mistakes when you're just doing it for you, and you certainly don't have to involve your family, your children. You could test the waters because, you deserve, and single women and divorced women, they deserve to have love, and not even just, maybe they just want to have a little bit of fun,
Yes.
And that's not for anybody else to judge, because when you're making the choice to get married, the majority of people are not going into marriage thinking that their marriage is going to end. But the type of women who are willing to end their marriage because they know it is unhealthy are the type of women that are self-directed. And they're not really, we might care. Some of us might care. But, if it was so important what society thought and their opinions and these things like that, we would still be in miserable marriages, and we're not.
Yeah. Right. And I think the misconception from a lot of women is that because we've made that choice that we're miserable because we're not married. I don't think that's true at all. Again, people say, oh, Denise, I never see you talking about a spouse. Who are you dating? I date. There is not someone that I'm willing to share with the world. There is not someone that I'm willing to claim publicly. That's not my focus right now. And when it is, it will be closer to marriage than anything. But I think a lot of times we make the mistake of putting too much of our business on social media as well. I'm not branding being in a relationship. I'm branding my business. And the person that I would take seriously is doing the same thing. He's comfortable with what I'm doing because he understands that life, he's busy as well. He's branding and building, his business and his career. But, I've also dated and had men say, oh, whenever I call you, you're always busy. Or whenever I call you, you're always doing something with the kids. That's another red flag. Because I tell people all the time, I have 3 children, and I'm an active parent. I have a lot of events and engagements and things that I would love to attend, but I can't always be headed out the door. And, when you're a single mom, that's another sacrifice that a lot of women don't want to make. But the time that you spend is important. 3 children, they're all in different places in their lives with school projects. I'm up sometimes at 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm making sure that these projects with my children, I'm checking them and I'm checking homework. I can't always be on the go, but a man who is ready for family understands that he's not going to be first all the time.
And it's really, it's kind of a great way,
not a little boy.
It's a positive thing because we're able to weed out, people that are just not meant for us, because you do want somebody that's kind of, on the same level, that wants the same things. Now for you, and I mentioned the word reinvention earlier, which I used to have a huge problem with, because for me, I used to always use the word, I have a repurposed life, because, I myself went back to school and got my degree, and then entered grad school, and then decided that, I wanted to launch a freelance writing business, and got into journalism. And so I'm just, a totally different person. And so you've been able to kind of evolve into this, entirely different, person. You have this different career path. Since launching your blog and your website and Society Moms and doing your TV show, I know that you didn't start off with the mission of, I want to help people. You kind of did it as a way to help yourself, and found out that, you were able to reach other people. First of all, how did you have an opportunity to be the community correspondent for HuffPost Live? How did that come about?
With all of the blog I was doing, sharing it on Twitter, communicating with other moms who had similar networks, social media is a powerful thing. You don't really know who's watching you. And I was, in the habit of accepting followers, and I had quite a few followers from Huffington Post, and really wasn't paying attention to the fact that I had followers from Huffington Post. But I was contacted by one of the production assistants, Julian, one of my favorite people. And he's, he messaged me. He's like, Denise, we love what you're doing on Huffington Post. The producer took a look at one of your clips on yesterday, and we want to know if you would like to interview Nene Leakes. And I was like, man, yes. I was in the process of branding Society Moms, but instantly I didn't want to step out of my lane of Society Moms. Nene is, one of the Real Housewives of Atlanta. I really was trying to figure out what question I would ask Nene that would tie into my brand. And I didn't want to abandon where I was, because I was excited about Huffington Post. So I stayed true to myself, which has been something that has been a blessing for me on this journey. And I submitted a few questions, all tied around the dynamics of moms and being a single mom the way that I was. I wanted to make sure that the people in my community could relate to my question. So the question that I asked her was, when you were a single mother with your oldest son, we know that she's now married to Greg, and she has, another son and things of that nature. But, Nene has shared her past history when, she was a single mother who was going through an abusive relationship. The person that she had her son by was someone that she went through physical abuse with, and not in her life nor her son's life, but she was a stripper. And that's what she had to do to feed him and put food on the table. So what I asked her was, when she was a single mom with her first son, did she foresee her success at this level? Because she talks about always knowing she was going to be successful. But I wanted to know, when we dream, are we dreaming that big? And at the time, Nene was on Huffington Post because she was in New York on Broadway doing Cinderella, which was a big deal. Not only was she someone who came from reality television, but she was being seen as a serious actress and someone who could do this play, and the first African-American, so to speak, to play that role on Broadway. And you can see the look on her face change, because I think, there were a few other correspondents on at the time, and they were asking her things about some of her funny comments, the thirst is real, and her hair, and, all those different things that she and the girls laughed, exactly. So, I wanted to kind of give her something real that she could relate to and that she could respond to. And her face changed completely. And you can tell really that it took her back to a place. I keep that clip on my Society Moms Facebook page for people to see, because people are always going there to look at it. And, her advice at the time was that you have to do whatever it is that you have to do to take care of your children. And, as a single mom, we have a very different life and a very different life perspective. We don't set all of these boxes to say, hey, in order to feed my child, I'm only going to do this. We have turned the dial in our mind to say, hey, I'm going to make sure, because I am the sole source, that I'm doing what I need to do to take care of my child. And I got an email from Julian after that, where they got a lot of feedback from that particular question. Nene later on made a comment on Twitter about it. And they continued to have me come back as a regular person. To start off, I was, just one out of maybe 3 or 4 other correspondents. And then it became a regular thing where they would just call me and I was there at a regular date. And I was the only correspondent on. I've interviewed Kelly Rowland, Donna Karen, actress Monique, and so many others. So it was really a great opportunity to be a part of HuffPost Live as a correspondent. I just spoke with Gabe. I try to keep in touch with them. Julian is no longer with HuffPost. As HuffPost Live, they've made some changes over there. They do have HuffPost Live DC, where they're just doing politics right now. Okay. But they've kind of just switched to the Facebook Live. And I emailed Gabe today, who was the one where I did my last HuffPost Live with. He was the production assistant over there. And it's been something that has really helped me, even with my confidence, as a journalist, as a talk show host, or leading up to my show being where it is today. So I'm very, very appreciative of that. And I'm still kind of connected with a lot of the people who are within the HuffPost family. We talk through LinkedIn and messaging on Twitter just to kind of see what some of them are doing with their lives is amazing. And many of the production and production assistants and producers have kind of gone on and done some major things even since HuffPost. Many of them are now like with ABC and Fox and, but a lot of them are still there. I do miss them quite a bit. As you know, it's definitely an exciting thing to be a part of. And
well, it's interesting the changes that they've made. And I had a chance to interact with another gentleman who's also connected to an organization that I work through, RAIN, who had the opportunity to, appear as a guest twice. And I was able to appear 2 times as a guest. And then I went on an additional time to kind of ask another guest a question because they needed somebody to log in. And, but it's so interesting because he talks about, oh my goodness, what they have been able to do for my brand and just add credibility. And I'm thinking, because, when I was initially asked, where it began for me is I was asked to come on the show as a guest, and I didn't like what I saw, so I said I need some media training, so I need to do some work, So I decided for the next year to basically say, yes to anything and everything, and so that's when I started doing some of the podcasts, and I did, an interview with the Wall Street Journal and things like that because I said I need some help, and the only way that I'm going to get better is to actually, do it and put myself in the situation where I'm not afraid to look a little bit silly. I said, you know what? I'm always going to have my little funny faces and expressions. As long as I'm able to articulate myself and I don't have lipstick on my teeth or something, I'm good. So.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I remember my first HuffPost Live, it happened so fast when Julian, first off, I had no idea that he had gone through my profile and things like that. And he sent me an inbox and I started to respond to the inbox to say yes. And he confirmed my email. And then the next thing my phone was ringing and it was New York. And as you know, I'm in Maryland. So I was like, oh, Lord, is my hair right? Is this right? And I was sweating bullets and he was just walking me through the process because he was so calm. But I think maybe after my 3rd or 4th time with HuffPost, I felt pretty comfortable. I knew where to look on my screen and things like that.
Nobody
it
told
does
me.
help.
I knew people that had gone
No.
before. I'm like, how come you didn't tell me to look at my green light?
Yeah, look at the little light right there, girl. But it was just a great experience for me. It's something that also has given me a lot of recognition with a lot of people, and people have viewed a lot of the tapes. If you type in Society Moms, many of the interviews that I've done, you know, I come up with HuffPost under different celebrities and things like that. But it's definitely something I'm going to miss a lot. I have joked with Julian quite a bit to say, oh, I know y'all are coming back after a while. You know, it's not going to work. Y'all are coming back.
I hope so. I just didn't realize, you know, when I started to think about it, I thought, okay, for everybody that's definitely in the line of doing advocacy and any type of activist that was able to go on and get that experience and get their point across and talk about the issues that are important to them, it was definitely, you know, important, you know, that we were able to use that forum. And we always, you know, meet so many great people through, you know, through that community. That's true. So that's wonderful. Yeah. But you, and I do want to take this moment just to let the viewing audience know that, you know, we're entering our closing segment. And so certainly if you have any questions, you're welcome to type them into the chat box. You can hit /Q and it will show me the question, and I can ask our guest, Denise Rogers, and she'll be welcome to answer them. But Denise, I did want to ask you, because I know you have a conference coming up that you're excited about. So tell us a little about what's coming up for you.
The Society Moms Empower Her Conference is coming up. It's Saturday, June the 11th. It's from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. It's at the Bowie Comfort Inn Conference Center, and it's going to be a powerful day for women. We're going to have some power speakers. I'll be speaking to the ladies to basically inform them on what it is they're going to have to be willing to face in order to be successful. Whatever your success is, know your success should not be your divorce. We're not going to talk so much about divorce, but we will talk about any challenge and being prepared to challenge that thing that challenges you. If it's an unhealthy relationship, if it's following your dreams, and there's certain things that are in the way of that, it's about being prepared to do the personal work that it's going to take for you to get right where you want to be. Shanika McClarty, the licensed psychotherapist that we saw in the clip, will be there. Shanika will be speaking with the ladies about, you know, valuing yourself even when others don't, and how to do that. And we'll have Wilma Jones, who is a 2-time best-selling author. Wilma is the author of Happier After. She is someone who is divorced, raised 2 sons, and Wilma is also going to be talking to the ladies about transitioning from your 9-to-5 job into that place of being a full-time entrepreneur. That's something that she's done and that she coaches, and she has a lot of corporate clients where she comes in and she works with them on building the morale in their businesses. So she's going to be talking to the ladies about transitioning. Ladrine Peterson is going to be talking to the ladies about branding yourself as a business. Many times as moms and women, we have a lot of gifts that we don't know how to coin as a business. Things that we can do from home, whether it's a side job or something that you're willing to do full time. Ladrine is going to be somebody that makes sure that you are branding yourself socially the way that you should to be successful. We have a power host, Jamila Scott. Jamila is going to be there to keep the ladies' spirits lifted. And the honoree is going to be Rushia Brown. Rushia is a WNBA player, or former WNBA player, one of the originals, with Lisa Leslie and some of the others. And she's the owner of Young Democrats of America magazine. I'm sorry, Young Black Entrepreneur. I just did a interview with the Young Democrats of America, Atima Omara. So it's a little late for me. Forgive me, Rushia. I love you. Rushia is the owner of Young Black Entrepreneur Magazine, YBE. And she's also the owner and founder of WPBA, which is the Women's Professional Basketball Alumni. She's going to come down from Atlanta, and she'll be there to meet the ladies to inspire them to go after what it is that they know that they deserve. And she'll share a little bit about her story. We're going to have vendors. We're going to have step and repeat. The hotel is providing a full lunch. We're going to have some major gift bags. We just got 2 corporate sponsors, MoPro, which is a digital expert website company. They're offering the ladies $50 off of website design, hosting, and 24-hour maintenance on websites. Because they're in the Society Moms Network. So we're going to make sure that that information is in the gift bags. And Apple of Annapolis has donated 1 iPod, hot pink, which will kind of match our colors for the ladies. And some special lady will get that in a raffle. So it's going to be an exciting time of empowerment where women can come and network. Women are showing up at 11. So from 11 to 12, they're networking, sharing their business and ideas, and vendors are there for them to kind of do some shopping. We have some major vendors with jewelry and all kinds of fun things that ladies like. And then the first speaker will go on at 12. So we'll break in the middle for a nice lunch, little intermission, and then kind of close out with our last speaker. So it's going to be really fun. They can go to Society Moms Empower Her Conference.eventbrite.com to get their tickets. I'm going to tell all the ladies now that we're going to have another special price during the week of Mother's Day. So tickets will be on sale that week to kind of help the moms out. And we're also going to sponsor 2 young mothers to come to the conference, and they won't have to pay anything because we know that it's a little difficult for them. But of course, go to Eventbrite, type in Society Moms Empower Her Conference, and you'll definitely find us. So I hope to see everybody there.
Well,
it's going to be a nice day.
If you're interested, and it sounds like it's going to be a wonderful event, and I've shared all of your links, including
great.
The event on Eventbrite in the chat box, as well as your website event page at societymoms.org. So they'll be able to link on and find that information and certainly get your tickets. Now, you have a show that reaches 55,000 viewers throughout. Am I saying this right? Is it Bowie or Bowie, Maryland?
It's Bowie.
When we
first started, it's been now 2 years. We were 55,000. Now we're 236,000 because of Verizon. So it's definitely grown. Verizon has released the channel into quite a few areas of PG County. If you have Verizon, it's on channel 11. And if you're in Lanham, Upper Marlboro, Seabrook, and Temple Hills, Clinton, Camp Springs, you're definitely able to get the show. It comes on at 10:30 in the morning and 3:30 in the afternoon on channel 11 if you have Verizon. And that's every day except for Wednesday and Sunday. They show spiritual shows. And then if it's Comcast, it's channel 77. And that's in the Bowie area. So
wonderful. And I know that you can catch some clips if you're interested.
Hi, Auntie Concierge. Thank you.
On the website. And let us know what we can look forward to in future shows. What's coming up for you?
I sure will. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you and share with your viewers. Thanks to everybody that logged on. I see your comments. You can follow me on Facebook, Society Moms, or Denise Rogers. I'm on Twitter at Society Moms, and LinkedIn, Denise Rogers, Instagram at Society Moms. So I'll answer any of your questions.
Well, I have enjoyed having you here. I know that it's going to be so beneficial for moms that are in the same situation, and just moms and just anybody else who wants to kind of understand, where single moms, where divorced moms are coming from. This has been beneficial. So I thank you so much for coming on as a guest. Again, all of Denise Rogers' links are in the chat box, and I will also share them on my website as well. As always, you can reach out to me and find me at myloveforwriting.com. That's mylove, the number 4, writing.com, and you can tweet me at mylove, the number 4, writing on Twitter. I always love to get your comments and your feedback. So again, thank you so much to our special guest, Denise Rogers, for joining us. Check her out at her website at societymoms.org, and you all have a great evening.
Shanon, thank you so much.
You're quite welcome.
See you soon.